Welcome to All Around America, the Time Traveler's Talk Show, a timeless program that takes you to famous places all around America where you'll meet the people who made history. This is your host, J.D. Rivera, talking to you from our mobile studio. Today, for our very first program, we're at the base of one of America's most famous symbols, the Statue of Liberty. So American, yet born in France. With me is Billy Jefferson, one of the guides here at the statue. Welcome, Billy.
Thank you, and welcome to Liberty Island and the Statue of Liberty National Monument.
Okay, Billy, now tell us a little about Lady Liberty.
Well, as you know, this is one of America's great symbols. She stands for freedom, an idea so near and dear to all Americans, actually to people around the world. As you mentioned, our beautiful lady came here from France. She was created by a great French sculptor, Frédéric Bartholdi.
And on the line with us from Paris, France, is Mr. Frédéric Bartholdi. Mr. Bartholdi, welcome to our show. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, J.D. It's good to be here.
So, Mr. Bartholdi, in the first place, why did you make Lady Liberty?
Eh bien, America's 100th birthday was coming up, so in France, the idea of a gift was on our minds. You know, of course, that France and America have always had a special friendship. A friend of mine suggested that the gift should be something that would symbolize an idea both countries love, liberty. And voila, the Statue of Liberty was born.
And how long did it take to give birth to Lady Liberty, and was it a long, hard labor?
Ha! Actually, it took over 10 years, much longer than I'd expected. We ran out of money several times, so construction had to be stopped. And yes, it was hard to do. Because the statue is so huge, one of the biggest problems was getting the statue to stand up. Without Mr. Alexandre Eiffel, I couldn't have done it.
And I think we have Mr. Eiffel on the line. Mr. Eiffel, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thanks for letting me be on your show. It was a great pleasure to help with the statue. I designed the framework, the internal structure, so Lady Liberty could stand. It was important that winds or storms would not knock her down. It was a real challenge.
Excuse me, Mr. Eiffel, but you must be the person who created the Eiffel Tower, aren't you?
Yes, I am proud to say that I did that, as well as many other constructions.
Thanks so much to the two of you. We owe you a lot.
My pleasure, J.D.
And mine.
And now, Billy, I have an email question here from Denver, Colorado, that asks us to tell about the role Mr. Joseph Pulitzer played.
Well, after the statue was made, there was no money left to build a pedestal. The statue needed something to stand on. And
Hello, J.D. and Billy. I think you wanted me to join you.
Mr. Joseph Pulitzer, what a pleasure. Tell us what you did.
The statue was finished, but she had nothing to stand on. I am proud to say that my newspaper, the New York World, was able to raise thousands of dollars to pay for the pedestal. We asked people from across America to send in whatever they could. Even school children sent in their nickels and dimes so that Lady Liberty would not be without a pedestal. The whole nation responded. It was inspiring.
you were deeply interested in this project, weren't you, sir?
Yes, I was. After all, I was an immigrant. I came from Hungary, and the idea of freedom that the statue symbolized was very important to me. I think sometimes Americans born here take freedom for granted.
How true. And by the way, Mr. Pulitzer, are you the Joseph Pulitzer who established the Pulitzer Prizes for outstanding achievement in letters?
One and the same, J.D. I established it in 1917.
Thanks for being on the show, Mr. Pulitzer. Like so many immigrants, your contributions have meant so much to this country. And I believe we have a caller from Cleveland, Ohio on the line. Go ahead, Cleveland.
Hello, J.D. and Billy. My name is Hannah Steinberg. I saw this wonderful lady when I sailed into New York Harbor in 1939 with my husband. We were escaping a terrible situation in Europe as World War II was starting. So when I saw her, I cried. It was so hard to leave our lives in Europe, but we were so happy to be safe and free.
After the war, did you go back to Europe?
No, we became U.S. citizens. And although we have gone back for a visit, this is our home now. And we are so thankful that America took us in. We hope the doors will always be open. And we hope Lady Liberty's words will always welcome the tired, the poor, and the homeless. Thanks for taking my call.
And thank you. Billy, perhaps you can explain what she meant by Lady Liberty's words.
She was referring to the poem by Emma Lazarus at the base of the statue. It goes like this. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me.
And we have another call, this time from Trenton, New Jersey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am Amra, and I am so happy to be on your show. 10 years ago, I came from Bosnia, and I could not speak English. Now I am on your show. I want to tell everybody that I did not see this statue when I arrived on the plane. But I have visited New York many times, and I have seen her in person. She is still wonderful to me.
Have you been to the island and gone inside?
Absolutely. I climbed all the way to the crown, every step. You can see New York. It is a wonderful view.
Thank you so much, Amra. Lady Liberty is indeed quite a sight.
And you should see her at night. The torch shines all night. She is truly a beacon of freedom that has greeted millions of immigrants on their way to Ellis Island.
Before we go, Billy, tell us a little about Ellis Island.
Ellis Island is in the harbor right next to us. It's the place where millions of immigrants arriving in New York were processed and admitted to the U.S. Now it's the Ellis Island Immigration Museum and part of the Statue of Liberty National Monument.
So, folks, there you have it. Our first stop at one of America's treasures, the Statue of Liberty. And don't forget to tune in next week when we'll be in Boston, Massachusetts. But before we go, there's still time for our listeners to call in with comments and questions. Good morning. This is J.D. Rivera, your host for All Around America, the Time Traveler's Talk Show. Today, we are in the city of Boston, Massachusetts. After visiting Lady Liberty, it is appropriate to be in Boston, where in the 1770s the words liberty and freedom began to be heard daily in meeting places like Faneuil Hall and on the streets and in the city's central park, the Boston Common. We are at the beginning of the Freedom Trail with our guide for today, Chris Ryan. Hello, Chris.
Hello, J.D. Welcome to the Freedom Trail. It's a 2.5-mile walk along the streets of Boston. You just follow the red line on the sidewalk, and you'll pass by 16 historic sites in just a couple of hours.
A couple of hours is out of the question for our program, so why don't you tell us about some of the highlights?
I'd be glad to. Let's begin with the site of the Boston Massacre.
John Adams was involved with that, and I asked him to be here today, but he couldn't make it. So filling in for him is John's better half, his wife, Abigail Adams. Mrs. Adams, you yourself are well known as a great letter writer, recording the events of those early years. Mrs. Adams, what can you tell us about the Boston Massacre?
It happened in March 1770, just in front of the Customs House. People were rather upset about the heavy taxes imposed by the British government, and an angry mob confronted a group of soldiers. We called them redcoats, and they were not very popular. In a panic, the soldiers fired at the crowd.
And so what happened?
5 people were killed.
Excuse me, Mrs. Adams, but we have a caller on the line with a question. Hello, Detroit. What's your question?
Mrs. Adams, I know your husband was a leader of the American Revolution, but I read that he defended the British soldiers in court.
That's true, he did. He felt it was his duty to defend them. He was a skilled lawyer, and he felt the rule of law must be more important than mob rule.
And he won, didn't he?
He did, and I'm sure he would do it all over again, even though he was a strong advocate of the rights of the American colonials.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Adams. Your husband went on to do great things for his country, patriot, diplomat, vice president, and second president of the U.S., and your son, John Quincy Adams, followed in his father's footsteps and became the 6th president of the U.S.
I have another question, J.D.
Go ahead.
I've read that the leader of the Boston mob was Crispus Attucks, an African American. Is that true?
Will you take that, Chris?
Sure. Crispus Attucks was a child of an African American slave and an Indian mother. Attucks himself was born a slave, but he ran away and probably spent some years at sea. He later returned to Boston and joined the angry mob that confronted the redcoats. He was the first man to die for America's freedom.
How ironic. Thanks for your call, Detroit.
Now, J.D., let me take you to another important scene of the American Revolution. Actually, it's not on the trail, it's in the water in Boston Harbor. And there, the angry Bostonians had a tea party.
A tea party? That doesn't sound like a very revolutionary thing to do.
JD and Chris, I've been standing by and I'd like to jump in here.
Of course. This is Mr. Samuel Adams. Go ahead, Mr. Adams.
I organized that party because we Bostonians were sick and tired of the taxes King George wanted us to pay.
And so you had a party?
Damned right. A group of us dressed up like Indians boarded some British ships and threw a few hundred boxes of tea into the water in protest over taxation without representation. King George took our money, but we had no voice in Parliament.
And when did that happen?
1773, 3 years after the massacre. Let me tell you, the flame of revolution was beginning to burn bright.
And burn it did. The next big event was just about 2 years later in 1775. And we can see where it all started right here on the Freedom Trail at the Old North Church.
And we've asked Paul Revere to tell us about that. Paul, are you there?
I am, J.D. We knew the British wanted to put that revolutionary flame out, and we knew they were planning to march to Concord to disarm the militia. And we knew they were hot on the trail of Sam Adams and John Hancock, 2 men who were fanning the flames of liberty.
Paul, there's a caller from Seattle who has a question for you.
Mr. Revere, I learned about you from Longfellow's famous poem, Paul Revere's Ride. I believe a friend put a lantern in the steeple of the Old North Church as a signal that the British were on the way. On April 19th, you rode from Boston to Concord to warn the militia.
That's right. When I saw the signal, I began my ride along with 2 friends, William Dawes and Samuel Prescott. We warned people all along the way.
Did you get to Concord?
I only got to Lexington, but Prescott made it all the way, and by morning, the militia was ready and waiting for the redcoats. Hancock and Adams got away, but the militia stood their ground and shots were fired.
The shot heard round the world.
Right. And thanks to you and your friends, Paul, the revolution was underway.
And just 2 months later, The colonial army met the Redcoats in the first major battle of the Revolution, the Battle of Bunker Hill.
And what happened there, Chris?
Well, there were some hills in Charleston, just across the river from Boston. The British planned to fortify the hills, but the colonials got there first and set up defensive positions on one of the hills. The British made 3 attacks, and on the final attack, the colonials retreated.
I'm back again, JD and Chris. Yes, our army retreated, but it was a victorious retreat for our new colonial army. We showed the British that we could and would fight. They attacked with over 2,000 men, and by the end of the day, half of them were casualties. 228 dead and 826 wounded. We lost some brave men too. Over 400 killed or wounded.
And that was the real beginning of a bloody war that finally ended 6 years later.
Although that concludes our visit to Boston and the American Revolution, there is still a revolution in Boston, but it's a soccer team, and the Patriots are still fighting, but now as a football team. From here, we go on to another revolution, the Industrial Revolution that got its American start in the city of Lowell, just a few miles north of Boston. Before we go, however, let's open the lines to questions and comments from our listeners. Good morning. This is J.D. Rivera, your host for All Around America. Last week we were in Boston, the birthplace of the American Revolution. And today we are in a city just north of Boston that was the birthplace of the American Industrial Revolution. Welcome to Lowell and the Lowell National Historical Park. I am at the Visitor Center with Jean Aganis, our guide for today. Jean, why is this place significant?
In the early part of the 19th century, Lowell became the leader and the model for the American Industrial Revolution. Today, the National Park Service has restored many of the old buildings and mills and turned them into a historical park.
So, Jean, why here?
Basically, there are 2 main reasons, and one of them is the Merrimack River.
A river? Interesting. Why was the Merrimack River important?
First, the Merrimack is a large river with a significant flow of water, and here in Lowell, the river flows rapidly at Pawtucket Falls.
So there was a lot of water power available.
Exactly. The force of falling water was used to turn water wheels and turbines, which provided the power for the machinery in the mills.
And what kind of mills were established here?
Textiles. By 1846, the textile mills of Lowell were putting out almost 1 million yards of cloth every week.
You mentioned another reason. What was it?
I think that I was the other reason.
Is that you, Mr. Lowell? Welcome. And tell us about your city.
Actually, JD, I don't know much about the city, but I became quite interested in the industrialization that was happening in England. And so I went there in 1810 to look and learn. I visited several places, but I was especially impressed with Manchester, the center of textile production. In 1814, I returned and with a friend built a successful water-powered mill just outside of Boston.
But not in Lowell?
Right. I died in 1817. But my associates realized that the Merrimack could provide a great deal of power, and so they began building mills there and named the area Lowell after me.
I see. Well, thanks so much for your call, Mr. Lowell.
I can pick up the story from here. By 1830, Lowell was the showplace of American industry. Many famous people came to Lowell to see how this great experiment was changing the ways Americans lived and worked. One of the visitors was the writer Henry David Thoreau.
And I think we have Mr. Thoreau on the phone. Mr. Thoreau, what did you see?
Well, I was, on the one hand, impressed. I wrote that Lowell was the Manchester of America, which sends its cotton cloth around the globe.
Excuse me, Mr. Thoreau, but we have a caller from Manchester, New Hampshire, with a question.
Mr. Thoreau, I have been an admirer of your writing for many years, but I am surprised by your comment. You were, in my mind, America's first environmentalist. Didn't you see what was happening to the environment?
Of course I did. In one of my books, I said that fish were once abundant here, but with the construction of the dams and the factories, the fish could no longer exist in the Merrimack.
And you were right. Here in New Hampshire, the salmon and other fish simply disappeared.
I went on to say that after a few thousand years, the factories would disappear and the river would be clear and clean again.
You were almost right, Mr. Thoreau, but it didn't take a few thousand years. Toward the end of the 19th century, the mills in Lowell were in trouble, and by the middle of the 20th century, most of the mills were shut down, and the city of Lowell was in decline.
J.D., I think I know one of the reasons. Other cities throughout the Northeast began to compete with Lowell. Right here in Manchester, for example, huge mills also took advantage of the Merrimack and joined the Industrial Revolution.
Thanks for your comment, Manchester. So Lowell couldn't keep up.
Right, and the city was changing in another way, and Sarah Bagley is with us to explain that.
Hello, J.D. and Jean. I was one of thousands of young and mostly single mill girls whose labor made the mill owners rich. We came to Lowell because in those days we had few other opportunities. For example, many of us were New England farm girls, and Lowell offered work and good wages. I came here to help support my family back on the farm. We lived in boarding houses built by the mills. At first we were happy to have work, and the boarding houses were clean and well kept.
So, weren't you happy to be employed?
Yes, but we worked 12 hours a day, and we began to feel like slaves, so we began protesting.
And what did the mill owners do?
They began to take advantage of the thousands of immigrants who were pouring into America. The immigrants supplied the cheap labor that America's industries needed.
And so?
And so the mill girls and the boarding houses disappeared, and the city of Lowell turned into a city of ethnic neighborhoods.
I can attest to that. I am descended from a Greek family myself, and even today, Lowell is a city with great ethnic diversity. First it was the Irish, then the French Canadians, followed by the Greeks, Portuguese, Poles, and in recent years, Cambodians and Hispanics.
And on the line with us is a descendant of an immigrant family, Jack Kerouac, another important American writer. Welcome to the show, Mr. Kerouac. Can you tell us a little about your experience growing up in Lowell?
Well, I was born in Lowell in 1922. My parents were French Canadians. At that time in Lowell, almost 1/3 of all the 100,000 residents were French Canadians. I grew up speaking French and only started to learn English when I went to school.
I imagine it wasn't easy growing up.
It wasn't, and it wasn't easy for my family either. The mills were closing, moving to the south, and my father got laid off. I got a scholarship at Columbia University, and we moved to New York.
And was that when you began your career as a writer?
Yes, it was. Although I dropped out of Columbia, I worked hard at writing. It was discouraging until finally in 1957, my novel, On the Road, became a success.
So your hard work paid off. Thanks for being with us, Jack.
And now, J.D., there is a festival every year in Jack's honor.
And so it's time to wrap up our visit to Lowell and the National Historical Park. This is a story of industrialization, environmental problems, immigration, economic decline, rebirth, and for many immigrants, a new life, difficult, but eventually a success story for many. Our next stop will be a trip back to the difficult years of the American Civil War when we visit the battlefield in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. But before we go, let's take some comments and questions from our listeners. Hello, everyone, and welcome to All Around America. Here we are in the beautiful hills of Pennsylvania, at one of the most famous historical places in America, Gettysburg National Military Park. This is your host, J.D. Rivera, welcoming you to the show which today is focusing on the Civil War, one of the most important and tragic events in American history. So, all you Civil War buffs, get ready with your questions and comments. Andy Stefanik, our guide, is here to take your questions. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Thanks, JD, and you're right. The Civil War was one of the most important, if not the most important event in American history. It divided the nation as never before, pitting the North against the South, brother against brother. And this very spot, Gettysburg, is where one of the bloodiest battles of the war took place for 3 days in July 1863. It was also the turning point of the war.
Tell us a little more about this tragic conflict. What was it all about? Why did America go to war with itself?
Well, in a nutshell, the South wanted to secede from the Union and become an independent country.
Why did they want to do that?
The causes were many: economic, social, political, cultural, but certainly the moral question of slavery was a big issue. Slaves were important to the South's economy, and the North opposed slavery. In the end, the South broke away to form its own country. The North, led by President Lincoln, opposed the secession. The tragic result was war.
Folks, we are privileged to have with us today one of America's greatest presidents, Abraham Lincoln. Mr. Lincoln, welcome to our show. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you, J.D. It's a pleasure to be here.
Mr. Lincoln, you were president during the Civil War, weren't you?
Yes, I was. And I can tell you those were terrible, terrible years. After the South seceded, I did not know whether the nation could be saved.
Excuse me, Mr. Lincoln. We have a caller from Richmond, Virginia, who has a question. Go ahead, Richmond.
Mr. Lincoln, why did that war go on for so many years? 5, I think. Wasn't the North and its army bigger and stronger? Why didn't the Union Army defeat the Confederate Army right away?
At the beginning of the war, our generals were weak and overly cautious. We had loss after loss, defeat after defeat. But your fellow Virginian, General Robert E. Lee, on the other hand, was a strong, smart leader. In the beginning of the war, he won victory after victory, even though he had a much smaller army. Gettysburg, however, was the first significant victory for the North. It turned the tide.
I am such an admirer of General Lee. Is it possible, J.D., to have him on your show?
As a matter of fact, he is here with us today. General Lee, what an honor to have you here today.
Thank you, J.D. Gettysburg was a tragedy. So many soldiers, many of them just boys, were lost on both sides in just 3 days. The North lost about 18,000, and we lost more than 20,000. At first, we thought we could win that battle. Our men were ready to fight, but we were outnumbered, and the Northern Army was dug in on top of a hill waiting for us. It was the bloodiest battle of the war.
General Lee, excuse me, but we have an email from Phoenix, Arizona that asks if the defeat at Gettysburg really broke the back of the South. After Gettysburg, it was just a matter of time, wasn't it?
That's exactly right. Up until then, our Confederate Army was very successful. But after Gettysburg, we lost battle after battle. We just couldn't hold off the Union Army.
Such a tragic part of our nation's history. Let's take our next call from Montpelier, Vermont. You're on the air, Montpelier.
Hello, JD. I'm one of those Civil War buffs you mentioned earlier in the show. I've taken part in many reenactments of Civil War battles. I have a complete Yankee uniform and an authentic rifle, but I've never been to Gettysburg. I know it's a famous battlefield, but when was it made into a national cemetery?
I can answer that. Congress dedicated the cemetery on November 19, 1863, 16 months before the war was actually over.
If I'm right, Mr. Lincoln, that is when you gave the famous Gettysburg Address, isn't it?
Yes, I was asked to speak at the dedication of Gettysburg, although I was not the main speaker. I had given a lot of thought to what I was going to say.
I heard that you wrote the speech on the back of an envelope. Is that true?
No, I did not write it on the back of an envelope. The occasion was too important. I wanted to honor all the young men who had died, and I wanted to remind the people that the founders of our country created one nation, not two, and it should not perish from the earth.
And what a speech that was. In fact, we have someone on the line who was there to hear that speech. Go ahead, Philadelphia.
This is Josephine Smith. I was with my husband, who was a reporter for a Philadelphia paper. He was there covering the dedication. It was a hot day, and Mr. Lincoln was the last speaker. People were already leaving to go home. However, Mr. Lincoln gave a short and powerful speech. It was a speech that will live forever.
Thank you, madam. My main message was that our young men had not died in vain. However, at the time, I thought my speech did not succeed.
Well, I was there, and my husband and I both agreed it was one of the greatest speeches ever given. Leaders worldwide began to quote it. Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. In my opinion, every school child should memorize it.
I'll go along with that. I can still recite it, and it never gets old. JD, let's take a walk across the battlefield and take a look at the various monuments. Here's one right here from the state of Maine. These memorials are proud reminders of each state that fought at Gettysburg.
They are impressive, but this will take us quite a while, so before we walk across this great battlefield, we have to say goodbye to our guests and our listeners. Thank you, callers. Thank you, President Lincoln, and you, General Lee. Please join us again next week when we travel to the great city of Chicago. Before we sign off, we have just time enough for a few more calls.